Everything in the kitchen cries. The window cries. The tea kettle cries. There are even tears in the grandmother's eyes. The weatherman predicted this day. He saw it coming. He saw it coming.
Good morning and welcome to Lost for Words. I'm Sarah Woods. Thank you for joining me as we explore some amazing female poets. Today we are going to be joining Elizabeth Bishop in a very old, vintagey, warm, and sad kitchen. We are going to be joining her and her poem called Sestina. I have a collection of her poems and her prose in this box set right here. This is what it looks like: Elizabeth Bishop Poems and Prose, and this is her book of poems that I'm looking at right now. And if you'd like to join me, it is on page 121, the poem of hers that we're going to explore. It's funny, when I started looking back through some of the poetry that I've explored on this channel, I realized that I hadn't explored one of my favorite poets, and that is her. That is Elizabeth Bishop. She's funny. She is able, with great skill and precision, to cast incredible visions of imagery with her words that are just clear and delicious and interesting. And I really, really love her way with words. She's also funny because she's kind of, to me, she's a little bit long-winded. So there is some of her poetry that I have a hard time getting into. But I have to say, there are some poems that she does that when she casts it out there, it's like this bell, and when you read it, it's like somebody hits the bell, and it creates this beautiful sound throughout your soul, and you can feel the whole poem, and it's amazing. So when she hits a note in your soul, like, you can feel it in an incredible way, and it's amazing. I'm not going to delve too far, into her history, into her story. She is someone that is very much worth exploring. She has a book called A Miracle for Breakfast. If you'd like to explore some of her life, it's amazing. I can't remember the lady that wrote the book right now, but it's very, very good. But for now, we're just going to dive straight into this poem. I'm going to take you into this kitchen where there is a grandmother and a child. And I'm going to let you feel this amazing feeling of warmth and sadness, sort of all mixed together at the same time. Here we go. This is called Sestina. September rain falls on the house. In the failing light, the old grandmother sits in the kitchen with the child, beside the little marble stove, reading the jokes from the almanac, laughing and talking to hide her tears. She thinks that her equinoctial tears and the rain that beats on the roof of the house were both foretold by the almanac, but only known to a grandmother. The iron kettle sings on the stove. She cuts some bread and says to the child, "It's time for tea now." But the child is watching the tea kettle's small, hard tears dance like mad on the hot, black stove, the way the rain must dance on the house. Tidying up, the old grandmother hangs up the clever almanac on its string. Birdlike, the almanac hovers half open above the child, hovers above the old grandmother and her teacup full of dark brown tears. She shivers and says she thinks the house feels chilly and puts more wood on the stove. It was to be, says the marble stove. I know what I know, says the almanac. With crayons the child draws a rigid house and a winding pathway. Then the child puts in a man with buttons like tears and shows it proudly to the grandmother. But secretly, while the grandmother busies herself about the stove, the little moons fall down like tears from between the pages of the almanac into the flower bed the child has carefully placed in the front of the house. Time to plant tears, says the almanac. The grandmother sings to the marvelous stove, and the child draws another inscrutable house. I just love this poem. It feels like when you read it, it's such a vivid, it has such vivid imagery that it immediately transports you out of wherever you are. Like you are here with this grandmother and this child in their kitchen, and you can feel this September rain, like it's in between cold and warm, and this rain is falling on the house. The lights dim, and they sit in the kitchen beside this stove, and they're reading jokes from the almanac, laughing and talking to hide her tears. It's funny when you read this, there is like this theme throughout the poem, throughout this experience in the kitchen of tears. That underneath all the pictures she's going to show us, all the things that happen with this grandmother and this child, that there is a repeated theme of tears, and it leaves you feeling like there is underneath these images, there is some kind of like sadness. Because here they sit at the table and they're reading jokes from an almanac, and they're laughing and talking to hide her tears. So you get the feeling that she's trying to laugh and talk and stay busy to keep the child from noticing her tears or her sadness. He starts to compare her tears with the rain, and she says they were both foretold by the almanac. And to me, that's kind of like, I love that idea that there's not only a weatherman for the sky and the air and what our sun is going to be doing and the rain is going to be doing, but there's also like an almanac for our soul. Like, I love that idea that there's like some book that you could open up and it could tell you this week there's going to be a lot of sadness in your life. This week there is going to be a lot of rain. And it says, but it's only known to a grandmother. So whatever this grandmother is going through, it's sort of hers alone. There's some sadness or some storm that she is weathering alone. And she's there with this child, and the kettle sings on the stove. She cuts some bread and says to the child, "It's time for tea now." But the child is watching the tea kettle's small, hard tears dance like mad on the hot black stove, the way the rain must dance on the house. I really love that imagery of imagining like this little child looking at a tea kettle and watching the droplets dance on the stove, and then at the same time, simultaneously, the rain falling on the house. That, I don't know, like a house can be like a tea kettle. Tidying up, the old grandmother hangs up the clever almanac on its string Birdlike, the almanac hovers half open above the child, hovers above the old grandmother, and her teacup full of dark brown tears. So we've got tears on the roof of the house. We have tears on the tea kettle on the hot black stove. We have dark brown tears in her teacup. She shivers and says she thinks the house feels chilly and puts more wood on the stove. It's amazing to me because I feel like you can feel the age of this house. Like there's something about the knowing that it's a grandmother's house that you can feel this house. Like it has like to me when I read it, it feels like a vintagey house with this tea kettle and this stove. And when it says that, like you can feel like this cool draft come through the house, and the grandmother saying, oh no, we're going to keep it warm in here. And she goes and she gets wood and she puts it on the stove. And you can almost feel your body get warmer as the grandmother puts the wood in the stove. It was to be, says the marble stove. I know what I know, says the almanac. It's like the stove knew, the almanac knew. And then the child draws a man and she puts buttons that look like tears and shows it proudly to the grandmother. But secretly, while the grandmother busies herself about the stove, the little moons fall down like tears from between the pages of the almanac into the flower bed the child has carefully placed in the front of the house. So to me, this is kind of beautiful. Like, it's like the almanac, the tears the almanac predicted, the rain the almanac predicted is falling out of the pages that are hung. It's hanging there like a bird, and these moon-like tears fall from the pages into the flower bed the child is drawing in front of the house. It's drawing on its picture. And it says, time to plant tears, says the almanac. The grandmother sings to the marvelous stove, and the child draws another inscrutable house. I like that. I think that's really beautiful because it's kind of, there's something comforting about the idea of being able to predict when rain is going to happen. There's something comforting about knowing that, like, you need rain in order for things to grow. You can't plant a garden in a desert where there's no rain. So even though there's like this underlying sadness, these underlying tears, she sings to the marvelous stove, and the child draws another inscrutable house. To me, there's something about this poem that feels kind of like a lullaby, or like something soothing for a child. Kind of like that feeling of like, I know you're sad, but it's going to be okay. These tears are actually going to be so helpful. This rain is going to help these flowers grow. And it feels like there's like purpose to the tears and purpose to the rain. And I don't know, there's like this feeling of like safety that I love in this. Something about this grandmother and this child together in this house. This rain that's outside this house, the rain inside the grandmother, the tears that are inside her heart. There is something about this kitchen that she puts the wood on the stove, like, that feels like we're in a safe place. We're going to stay warm. And the almanac knew these tears were coming, and it's okay. Or that's how I feel when I read it. I don't know how you feel when you read this, but I feel like there's something about this kitchen that I would like to actually visit. That if I was sad, that I would love to be with this grandmother and this child. That it feels like drinking tea and listening to the rain on the house and the tea kettle, the water droplets dancing on the tea kettle, and watching her put wood in the stove. Like, there's something very comforting about the happenings of this kitchen. Anyway, I hope I've given you a little bit of a taste of how powerful Elizabeth Bishop's imagery can be and what she can do with poetry. And I hope maybe it will inspire you to explore her some more, or maybe inspire you to write some of your own poetry. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you again next time.